Everybody. Please be sure to subscribe. Subscribe so we know when we drop new videos, new podcasts, and also please like the videos and share them. Share them. Tell your friends about them. Spread this great message that we at the Zuko are spreading. So subscribe, like, and share. It really helps. Thank you.
Welcome, everyone, to our podcast. This is a place where we will deep dive into the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous to explore its promises and prayers and the profound spiritual experience that comes from working the 12 steps. I'm Lyndsey, and I'm joined by my amazing co host and dear friend, Elisa.
Hey everyone, we are so excited to embark on this journey with you. Both of us share deep enthusiasm for reading and breaking down the big book, especially the first 164, which outlines the path to recovery from alcoholism.
One of the things we find the most fascinating about the big book is that there is the two asterisks that are found on the first 164 pages, both referencing the spiritual experience. When we come across an asterisk in our book study, we'll pause to explore its significance and discuss the change in perception that occurs when an alcoholic truly works the 12 steps.
Along with studying the promises, the incredible assurances this big book offers, we'll also look at the warnings, directions, and prayers tied to each step. We believe these passages hold immense power, offering guidance, hope, and transformation to those seeking recovery.
While the big book will be our primary text, we will also reference the 12 Steps and 12 Traditions book to enrich our discussions. So grab your books, your pencils and highlighters, or your e-readers, and let's get started.
But before we begin this book study, let's take a moment to center ourselves in the program. Please join us in saying the third step prayer together. And I'm going to put this in the chat for anybody who may need to reference it. It's on page 63 of your big book as well. All right. God,
God,
I offer myself to thee
to
to
build
build with
me
me
and
and do with me as thou wilt.
will.
Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do thy will.
will.
Take away my difficulties, that
That
victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. May I do thy will always.
Thank you so much, everybody. Let's get started.
All right. Good afternoon again, everyone. My name is Elisa. I am a recovered alcoholic, and we are going to start on the title page of our big book, where it says Alcoholics Anonymous, the story of how many thousands of men and women have recovered from alcoholism. We are using the fourth edition. Alcoholics Anonymous World Services Incorporated, New York City, 2001. So the first promise is on our title page of our big book. and that this is the story of how many thousands of men and women have recovered from alcoholism. Miss Wendy, in my big book, I put my recovery, my sobriety date. So my date in here is 9/18 of 21.
And my date is 1 of 3 of 2017. So January the 3rd, 2017.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank
All
you.
right.
Okay.
And then if you would like to turn to the contents for us, we're going to break this down because a lot of people start at Bill's story, page 1. And to thoroughly follow the instructions in the big book, we don't want to miss out on any important facts. So we are going to start our study on page XI. But before we do that, we're going to look at the table of contents and we're going to break these down. So we're going to start with the preface, and then we will move to the foreword to the first edition, the second, the foreword to the third, foreword to the first or fourth edition, the doctor's opinion, and then Bill's story. And in those pages, we are going to investigate the problem. In chapters 2 through 4, that gives us the solution. In 5 through 7, that's where we take action. And in chapters 8 through 11, those are often referred to as the pre-Al-Anon chapters. And then in our contents, it gives you personal stories. We have part 1, part 2, and part 3. And we strongly encourage that if you're having trouble relating to us, but still think that you may have a drinking problem, to find one of those 42 stories. The sections are broken off, and the way that I understand it is the first part is they stopped in time. Oops, I'm sorry, that's the second part. The first part is pioneers of AA. The second part is they stopped in time. And then part 3 is they lost nearly all. And so we won't be covering the stories in this study, nor anything past page 164 after we start at page XI with the reading portion. But again, those are things that the stories are where you can read another alcoholic's perception and find where you can relate. And then it gives the appendices. And I misspoke because we will hit on the spiritual experience as many times as the text tells us to do that with asterisks. And that is twice, or 3 times, excuse me. Yes, 3 times. And so with that, I want to give the opportunity if anybody has any questions, comments, concerns before we start with the preface to come in and share if you would like. No? All right. So we will start with the preface on page XI. It says this is the 4th edition of the book Alcoholics Anonymous. The first edition appeared in April of 1939, and in the following 16 years, more than 300,000 copies went into circulation. The second edition, published in 1955, reached more than a total of 1,150,500 copies. The third edition, which came off the press in 1976, achieved a circulation of approximately 19,550,000 in all formats worldwide. So we don't just print this book in English. It's printed in many different formats throughout. And so what I hear, Wendy, would you like to come in and share on this first paragraph?
Let's see, on the first paragraph, and we are looking again on the preface. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Um, what strikes me is that, it started out, in English, with one copy, and now, with the fourth edition, and then if we're going to have a new edition coming out, now we have electronically. So you can. What I love about that is that you'll be able to take your your big book with you wherever you go. So there haven't been any significant changes in the first 164 pages. So therefore, the first portion of the volume that describes AA's recovery program has been left largely untouched in the course of revisions that were made to the second, third, and the fourth edition. I'm going to go ahead and pass it back to you, Elisa.
Thank you, Miss Wendy.
Mm-hmm.
Would anybody else like to come in and share on the mushrooming effect just with the printing of our book? That tells me that there's something in here that works, is what those numbers tell me, and the increases and the formats. So let's keep reading. Because this book has become the basic text for our society and has helped such large number of alcoholic men and women to recovery, there exists strong sentiment against any radical changes being made in it. Therefore, the first portion of this volume, describing the AA recovery program, has been left largely untouched in the course of revisions made for the second, third, and fourth edition. The section called The Doctor's Opinion has been kept intact, just as it was originally written in 1939 by the late Dr. William D. Silkworth, our society's great medical benefactor. So it's setting us up, and for me, when I read this, they haven't made any changes. And knowing what the context of this book does say, for me today, I perceive that as a promise, that they're keeping the directions in place because it's worked. It's worked for many thousands of others, so it can continue to work for many thousands of others. We keep it simple. So would anybody like to come in and share on that part? Miss Lyndsey, ask you to unmute. Come in and share with us.
Hi, Lyndsey, grateful recovered alcoholic. I just wanted to mention also that we see that in fellowship too. When we get in here, we see that there's hope and there's promises. There's these promises of what's written in the big book that does come true. And you can see that in fellowship, not only in the book, but in the fellowship that's amongst you. Thanks for letting me share.
Thank you, Miss Lyndsey. Glad you're here. Thank you for coming in. Come on in, Sam.
Hey guys, hey Alyssa, thank you so much, Snap Alcoholic. Yeah, I wanted to speak to what the topic that you were speaking on, the 164 pages not changing very much since the beginning. I think for me, it reminds me of how consistency and repetition and stability is like so big for alcoholics. Like we having that stability structure, and it working and for, like it says, like it worked for thousands of people, so it could work for me. That always really made sense to me. But yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Sam. Glad you're here. Thank you for coming in and sharing. Yeah, and Alyssa, recovered alcoholic. For me again, the importance of starting here is because I know my first year, like it probably wasn't even, I didn't even need to get it to a year. When my brain started to clear, I'm like, well, what about this? What about this? I wanted to be the radical change. I don't need to change anything but me. The text is just fine. And I've learned that after I sat down and I took the cotton out of my mouth, took it out of my ears and put it in my mouth, and I read. And so I have an understanding today. So, and that's what the preface and the forwards is going to do. It's going to give us the history, and what the book contains. So awesome. We're going to continue reading. So the second printing of the first edition added the appendix spiritual experience. In the second edition, the appendices on the AA traditions, the medical view, and religious view of AA, the Lasker Award, and information on how to contact AA were added. and the appendix on the Alcoholic Foundation was discontinued. But the chief change was in the section of personal stories, which was expanded to reflect the fellowship's growth. Bill's story, Dr. Bob's nightmare, and one other personal history from the first edition were retained intact. 3 were edited and 1 was retitled. New versions of 2 stories were written. With new titles, 30 completely new stories were added, and the story section was divided into 3 parts under the same headings that are used now. In the 3rd edition, Part 1, Pioneers of AA, was left unchanged. 9 of the stories in Part 2, They Stopped in Time, were carried from the 2nd edition. 8 new stories were added. In Part 3, They Lost Nearly All. 8 stories were retained, 5 new ones were added. The 4th edition includes 12 concepts for world services and revises the 3 sections of personal stories as follows. A new story has been added to Part 1 and 2 that originally appeared in Part 3 have been repositioned there. 6 stories have been deleted. 6 of the stories in Part 2 have been carried over. 11 new ones have been added and 11 taken out. Part 3 now includes 12 new stories. 8 were removed, in addition to 2 that were transferred to Part 1. All changes made over the years in the Big Book, AA's fond nickname for this volume, have had the same purpose: to represent the current membership of Alcoholics Anonymous more accurately, and thereby to reach more alcoholics. If you have a drinking problem, we hope that you may pause in reading one of the 42 personal stories and think, yes, that happened to me. Or more important, yes, I felt like that. Or most important, yes, I believe this program can work for me too. So the paragraphs that I moved through, it was explaining the changes. And the one thing I love about the preface is that they keep themselves accountable to us as the editors of this book. And that's huge. That's keeping the integrity. We live by principles, spiritual principles, and so I respect that today. Seeing that, and again, reading the preface is giving me the history of the book. And then it says, all changes made over the years in the Big Book have had the same purpose: to represent the current membership. So they make the changes in those stories to help us get a better understanding, right? But they aren't changing the directions because the directions work. So would anybody like to come in and share on the preface before we move on to the forward to the first edition?
Yeah, I'm Wendy. I'm an alcoholic, and I just wanted to make a quick comment that, one of the things that I consider to be, one of my spiritual experiences is when I first got into AA and I started reading the big book, and I realized that was me. I mean, it was almost as if someone had crawled in my head while I wasn't looking and wrote a whole book about me. And it's just, thinking about the different versions and, different editions of the book, and having those first 164 pages not change, for me, it's magical in that I love books, but this book is one of those. It's written in a way that, depending on what time, what day, where I am in my current life, I can read the same passage and get something totally different out of it, and something that helps me learn about me and how to be a better person and get higher to my closer power. So thanks for letting me add that.
Thank you, Miss Wendy. Come on in, Sam.
Yeah, something I noticed too today reading this with you guys is that it's written in a way that's almost like aware that there are alcoholics who are going to read it and not do the work. but they want us to do the work, and you have to be willing to do the work. But there's like something I just noticed about the way that they're talking. It's like they can say it, but they can't make me do it. I have to have the willingness to do it. It's in the book. I just have to do the work. And I can hear it from even the beginning parts of this book that they're talking like that. So it's just kind of powerful to start from the beginning. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Sam. All right. So let's move on to the foreword to the first edition. This is the foreword as it appeared in the first printing of the first edition in 1939. It says, "We of Alcoholics Anonymous are more than 100 men and women who have recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body." That's a promise. Here's direction to show other alcoholics precisely how we have recovered is the main purpose of this book. For them, we hope these pages will prove so convincing that no further authentication will be necessary. We think this account of our experiences will help everyone to better understand the alcoholic. And then I'm going to read a warning. Many do not comprehend that the alcoholic is a very sick person. And besides, and I'm going to finish with a promise, we are sure that our way of living has advantages for all. A lot in that. Would anybody like to come in and share? Come on in, Sam.
Well, it says for all. It even says it in the book that this book can apply to everybody. I didn't know that. Okay, thanks. That's all.
There are promises in the forewords. All right. And the warning too is that it's getting an understanding of who we're dealing with, and there's going to be a few chapters in here that help us not just deal with um, an alcoholic in an AA meeting in the setting of somebody that wants to come in, but it gives us directions and examples of how to deal with sick people around us and generally, because I don't have to be an alcoholic to be spiritually sick. So, yes, it's loaded with information. Come on in, Lyndsey.
Lyndsey, grateful recovered alcoholic. So it's talking about already, it's giving a hope. Like 100 is a lot. Recovered. Not recovering, recovered. That's more than one person tooting their horn about, like, oh yeah, it works. Sure, yeah, it really does. There's 100 already. Thanks.
Hey, I'm Wendy. I'm
Thank
an
you, Lyndsey.
alcoholic, and I just wanted to add kind of a little anecdotal note about this. Because I read the forward of the first edition, but I had an opportunity once, and another alcoholic was able to say this to me in a situation. We were in a conversation, and I got it. So I was complaining about a relationship, somebody in a relationship to another person in the program. And what she said was, she said, well, I know what's going on and what's wrong. And I said, what? And she said, that person isn't working a program. And the reason that I say that is that one situation when that trusted alcoholic friend told me that, I've been able to use that and kind of stop myself and pause whenever I'm having an interaction with another person that's not a positive one. So thanks for letting me share that.
Thank you, Miss Wendy. Yeah, so we found two promises that the people who have used this recover, and um, those those who take advantage of this way of living. There's reward. So, all right, awesome. We're going to keep reading. It is important that we remain anonymous because we are too few at present to handle the overwhelming number of personal appeals which may result from this publication. Being mostly business or professional folk, we could not well carry on our occupation in such an event. We would like it understood that our alcoholic work is an avocation. And I'm going to look up the definition of avocation. So it says hobby or minor occupation. That it's not a full-time job, right? We don't want it to be a full-time job. And so this was back, of course, in 1939 when it was Bill and Bob. There was Bill and Bob and Ebby and the other Bill Dotson, in the Clarence Snyder era. And so for them, that was a different time period, where today we have, as alcoholics in our business world, there's Family Medical Leave Act that we're protected with. There's employee associate services. I think that's how you say it. But there's things where, yes, it's important that we as individuals remain we keep our anonymity the way that we choose. We each have that choice. We don't give our anonymity to someone else to break, if that makes sense. So would anybody like to come in and share on that part of the reading? All right, I'm going to continue reading. When writing or speaking publicly about alcoholism, we urge each of our fellowship to omit his personal name, designating himself instead as a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. Hi, my name is Elisa. I'm a recovered alcoholic. Or I could just say, hi, my name's Elisa. I'm an alcoholic. Would anybody like to come in and share on this part of the reading?
Hey, I'm Wendy. I'm an alcoholic, and I can share a little bit about what it was like when I first got in, and how my sponsor and the other women in the fellowship helped me learn how to interact with other alcoholics in our community, because we live in a smaller community. And so what I was taught was that if I haven't had a conversation with someone about how to interact when I see them in public, that I should just, pretend like I don't know them, and keep on. And then there were other types of relationships. Like, I did have relationships with people due to connections with my children. And we would just say we know each other from church, or we know each other from school. Places where we really did know each other from, as well as being alcoholics and being in Alcoholics Anonymous. And then the further I've gotten in my program, the more comfortable I am with self-disclosing that I'm an alcoholic. And I will say something like, I'm an alcoholic and I'm in recovery, or I'm a part of the recovery community. So thanks for letting me share that.
Thank you, Miss Wendy. Come on in, Clyde.
Yeah, hi. Thanks. I'm an alcoholic. My name's Clyde. I just want to point out for clarification that this anonymity is to protect AA and the group, not us individually, because if a famous person gets out there and says, I'm in AA and is associated with AA, and then they relapse, it gives us a black eye as a group. So it's not for the protection of the individuals. It's much more so for the protection of our group, our fellowship. Thank you.
Thank you, Clyde. You are exactly right. Yes. Come on in, Valerie.
Hi, I'm Valerie, an alcoholic. And yeah, Clyde is right. But for my personal relations, whether it be work or neighbors or whatever, I love the fact that I did have many choices to say, yep, I'm an alcoholic. If there was a way where I thought I could say that safely, then yeah, like where I worked, on the weekends, it was kind of like a laid back weekend. So I'd bring all my books there. And we had one woman who wasn't in AA, just loved the 12-step book. She says, can I read this? I'm like, yeah, sure. She goes, can you pick me up a copy after she read the whole thing? So, I don't know. That's all I got.
Thank you, Valerie. Glad you're here. Come on in, Sam.
Hey guys, Samantha, alcoholic. Yeah, just to Clyde's point, I usually refrain, or I do. I don't use the word AA when I'm talking about my recovery, and that's like how simple I do it. Like I'll talk about being sober. I just don't use AA in my terminology, unless they're asking me about it. And then I talk about like my home group, if they open the door to like, oh, so you're in AA, I'm like, heck yeah, now I get to talk about it. But I don't go out of my way to say I'm sober because of AA. I think it gets dangerous there because if I were to relapse, people would look at AA and be discouraged because they would think that maybe it doesn't work. And I think that's why protecting AA as a whole is important. But yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Sam. All right, come on in, Lyndsey.
Lyndsey, alcoholic. I just wanted to come in and state that, especially on places like Facebook, you will not scroll through any of my posts and see where I have said that I'm in AA or even posts about alcohol. I know even yesterday I posted something about, how the promises do come true, and that's kind of giving a little bit of a hint. And it's not coming from shame, it's just coming from the same with if somebody else hasn't posted something directly, I will not comment or disclose any of that kind of information, right? I try to respect the privacy. It's more about respect than it is about anything else. Thanks for letting me share.
Thank you, Lyndsey. Glad you're here. All right. We are going to continue reading and welcome in anyone that just joined us. We started at the title page of our study. So we have made it, we're at the bottom of page XIII, which is the forward to the first edition, and we are working out of the fourth edition. So very earnestly, we ask the press also to observe this request, for otherwise we shall be greatly handicapped. And in my book, I have tradition 11 next to this. So I'm going to go back to the back of my book. Because on page 562 are traditions, the short form and the long form. So our public relations policy is based on attraction rather than promotion. We need always maintain personal anonymity at the level of press, radio, and films. So that ties in with both of those paragraphs that we just read when speaking publicly. And then we ask the press to do so as well. Come on in, Sam.
Okay, so yeah, I just wanted to share too that like I'm very proud to be an alcoholic. That's not to say that I talk about AA, but as an alcoholic who's recovered, sober, in sobriety, I talk about that publicly all the time. It's a part of what I share on my social medias and in public with other people. I just don't use the term Alcoholics Anonymous when I talk about it. And so that's the line. I think that there's a huge sober movement happening that's really positive, and I want to be a part of that. I think it's beneficial to have that in the media. But again, the way I keep it simple is I just don't ever start with like I'm in AA, and that's as simple as it is. I could still talk about being sober. And so yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. Glad you're here. All right. So I'm hearing tradition 8 and 11. So 8 is Alcoholics Anonymous should remain forever non-professional, but our service centers may employ special workers. And then 11 is our public relations policy is based on attraction rather than promotion. We need always maintain personal anonymity at the level of press, radio, and films. And then I'm going to read the next paragraph, and it says, we are not an organization in the conventional sense of the word. There are no, so I'm going to stop there because that is tradition 9, which is AA as such never ought to be organized, but we may create service boards as or committees directly responsible to those they serve. So what that means is the groups are the strongest. And then, World Services, they take from us what the feedback we give, right? So the powers in the group. And then the next line says, there are no fees or dues whatsoever. There's tradition 7, which tradition 7 is every AA group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions. And then the next sentence, the only requirement for membership is an honest desire to stop drinking. That is tradition 5, which on the short form is, oh, excuse me, that's tradition 3. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. So in one paragraph so far, we've had tradition, well, the previous paragraph was tradition 11. We've had tradition 8 and 9, 7 and 3. And then it says, we are not allied with any particular faith, sect, or denomination, nor do we oppose anyone. We simply wish to be helpful to those afflicted with alcohol. And so I'm going to read tradition 5. Each group has but one primary purpose: to carry its message to the alcoholic who still suffers. So we're not here to talk about, what faith or sect or denomination is better, nor do we oppose anyone. We simply want to help those who are suffering. Would anybody like to come in and share on that before I continue reading? Come on in, Clyde. You can come in and share, Clyde.
Oh, I thought I was on. Sorry, I was muted. It also speaks to tradition 10. Alcoholics Anonymous has no opinion on outside issues. So this, faith, sector, denomination, that's an outside issue. And so that's how we avoid public controversy, by not taking a position on those things. So wanted to share that. Thank you.
Thank you. I didn't have that one in there, but he's absolutely right. So you see they're working promises in our forwards, they're working traditions into our forwards. There's a lot of information in here. So again, the importance of starting at the preface. Come on in, Lyndsey.
So Lyndsey, alcoholic, I think that what is so incredibly beautiful is the fact that we don't ever have to talk about a particular God or higher power. I think that as long as we found that and we're grounded in that, that this program works. It's shown that it works. And I think that that is one of the most beautiful promises, right? Is that we can all come together and have a similar understanding without having to believe the same thing. Thanks.
Thank you, Lyndsey. Glad you're here. Thanks for coming in. Come on in, Sam.
Mine's a bit of a question, but also, yeah. So today a lot of people came in for Ash Wednesday and had their things on their head and they were talking about it for the ashes and they were just sharing a joy, right? Because that's part of their higher power. And everybody was really welcoming to it. There wasn't anybody there to say anything negative, but I was just kind of curious. It's okay to celebrate our higher power, whichever we choose, right? And it's people can either take it or leave it. It's not like, I guess that's my question. It's like, that's okay. It's not like they can't share their joy. Because I like that kind of stuff. But because seeing other people's higher power helps me connect better to mine because I have the open-mindedness and the teachableness. And so yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on it for today. Okay.
Absolutely. We're there to share our experience, strength, and hope and what's worked for us using this outline, the program of action as it's outlined. Now forcing it, telling somebody that they have to do it, that's different. But absolutely, joy shared is doubled. Come on in, Valerie.
I mean, just like Lyndsey said, I mean, I absolutely love Alcoholics Anonymous because you can have your own personal relationship with your higher power, no matter what it is. You know, and that's the greatest. I'm gonna put a tear in my. That's the greatest thing. No matter what book I bring women through, just replace higher power with whatever God you're carrying. As long as you're have a personal relationship with your higher power, whatever label you want to put, it's okay in AA. You know, it's just okay. It's great. You know, and I love that. Anyways, don't want to get too emotional.
Thank you, Valerie. Glad you're here. All right, we shall be interested to hear from those who are getting results from this book, particularly from those who have commenced work with other alcoholics. We should like to be helpful to such cases. Inquiry by scientific, medical, and religious societies will be welcomed. Alcoholics Anonymous. So that is the foreword to the first edition. So we're going to move on to the foreword to the second edition. And
Alyssa,
these
sorry.
are, oh, come on in, Lyndsey.
Lyndsey, alcoholic. I wanted to bring up that how step 12 popped into my head there. We want to hear from people that have particularly been working with others. So they're starting to talk about step 12 right there. Thanks.
Absolutely. Thank you for getting me to pause and point that out, because we just pointed out all the traditions, and that is, yes. And that's what, if you look at the 42 personal stories in the back of the book, you know, most of all of those have that in there, but step 12, we can't keep it if we don't give it away. It brings it full circle. So thank you, Lyndsey, for coming in and sharing that. Come on in, Miss Wendy.
Yeah, Wendy, alcoholic. I just wanted to make a comment to what we were talking about right before the last paragraph in step 12. What really attracted me to the program was the fact that, the only requirement for membership is an honest desire to stop drinking. And then we don't require anyone to have any particular faith or be a member of any sect or denomination. That was appealing and attractive to me, because when I got to AA, I didn't trust anyone but myself. And I feel like, the way it was written, it's a little, I don't see any musts or don't or stop or can't. And I feel like that allowed me a little bit more flexibility. And I was more attracted to that, as opposed to if somebody just said stop, quit it, and don't. So I just wanted to make that comment. And to me, the willingness comes through in those two statements. So thanks for letting me share that.
Thank you, Miss Wendy. Come on in, Clyde.
Yeah, hi, quiet alcoholic. Just a quick point on, in the foreword, it says the only requirement for membership is an honest desire to stop drinking. And yet the tradition 3 on page 562 says the only requirement for AA membership is a desire to stop drinking. So the word honest was removed from the tradition. So as long as you have the desire to stop drinking, you can call yourself a member. You are a member as long as you have a desire to stop drinking. So for some reason they took the word honest out. I guess that lowers the bar a little bit. Thank you.
Thank you, Clyde. And when you were talking, you know what, I correlated that last paragraph where it says we shall be interested to hear from those who are getting results from the book, right? Like, is somebody who came in that didn't necessarily have that honest desire, but they were interested, and then they heard what we had, and then their story, their experience, strength, and hope as a result of that. I can see the positive effect of taking that emphasis off of it, because I know in our room we let people listen, right? If you've been drinking, you can listen. And then some of those people are the greatest miracles that I've watched, like I'm gonna like they have, like, it's been amazing to watch them grow up in sobriety, and they had to sit in the room drunk for a few weeks or months, like, you know, some of them maybe a year or longer. So yeah, it's absolutely beautiful. So positive change there, if you ask me. Come on in, Sam.
Yeah, I was just thinking as you guys were talking, like, if you were to ask me while I was actively drinking, if I had an honest desire to stop, I wouldn't be able to really answer that question because I was lying to myself and to everyone around me. And I was living in, without the sunlight of the spirit. How honest could I be without my higher power, God, in my life in that way? I just think it protects the alcoholic from themselves by taking out honest, because it's giving more people an opportunity to get sober and then have an honest desire to stop drinking, because once we stop drinking, that's when honesty kind of starts. I feel like it's a protection for the active alcoholic who can't really decide anything. And I've seen like Elisa work with people in the rooms who are still drinking, and she'll ask like, do you want to stop? And a lot of times they're as honest as they can be in that moment. Like either they do or they don't. But to say that they can answer honestly for sure, I don't think so. So I think maybe that might be a reason why.
Thank you, Sam. Yes, absolutely. Thank you for coming in and sharing that. Coming in, Miss Wendy.
Hey, Wendy, still alcoholic. I wanted to kind of touch on honesty from me when I was listening to the previous share. For me, honesty has been a progression. So, for example, I've shared before in a meeting the difference between the first time I did a fourth and fifth step and the second time I did a fourth and fifth step. And then, even in other fourth steps that I've completed since then, the further I get into the program, the more I realized how much I was lying to myself and how dishonest I was and how dishonest I still can be. So for me, that, and my sponsors really helped me work on, more will be revealed. And I, it's a process and but a worthwhile one. Thanks for letting me share that, y'all.
Absolutely. That's promise. Some of us grow into it more slowly. It talks about that in the 9-step promises, but it's also going to talk to us about that in we agnostics, I believe, um, about seeking our higher power. Sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. That's not just referencing. Um, it's all aspects, and that's my place of willingness today is 1,000 times stronger than it was last year, even. So, we continue to grow in under effectiveness and understanding. So that's awesome. All right. So let's move on to the forward to the second edition. And this is 16 years after the first edition. These are the figures given in this forward describe the fellowship as it was in 1955. Since the original forward to this book was written in 1939, a wholesale miracle has taken place. Our earliest printing voiced the hope that every alcoholic who journeys will find the fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous at his destination. Already continues the early text. 2s and 3s and 5s of us have sprung up in other communities. So there's a promise in there. And the direction is keep printing the book because it says since the original forward to this book was written in 1939. So the writing of this book, that was the action, and it produced a wholesale miracle. Our earliest printing voiced the hope that every alcoholic who journeys will find the fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous at his destination. That's more of the promise. Already continues the early text, 2s and 3s and 5s of us have sprung up in other communities. So that happens, would anybody like to come in and share on that part of the reading? All right, I'm going to continue going. 16 years have elapsed between our first printing of this book and the presentation in 1955 of our second edition. In that brief space, Alcoholics Anonymous has mushroomed into nearly 6,000 groups, whose members is far above 150,000 recovered alcoholics. Groups are to be found in each of the United States and all over the provinces of Canada. AA has flourishing communities in the British Isles, the Scandinavian countries, South America, South Africa, Mexico, Alaska, Australia, and Hawaii. All told, promising beginnings have made in some 50 foreign countries and U.S. possessions. Some are just now taking shape in Asia. Many of our friends encourage us by saying that this is but a beginning, only the augury of a much larger future ahead. So, not only are people recovering, but the groups are taking place as well. So there's substance. Come on in, Miss Valerie.
You know, I'm smiling from the inside out with this. You know, years ago I was convention junkie, and if y'all don't know what a convention is you meet in one place from people from all over come to one place, and it was so beautiful to see people from Africa or anywhere, any state or whatever, just come to one place. We're all together. It's just amazing to see that it expanded that largely. It just amazes me. It just amazes me. Nothing greater than, you see, many states, many countries at the end of the conventions were all gathered in a circle. Last one I went to was probably like 2,000. Circle, hands, saying the Our Father, you know, and that's just friggin' amazing to me. And I love how it expands into different countries and states or whatever. But thanks, that's it.
I bet that was electrifying. All right. Come on in, Miss Lyndsey.
It's Lyndsey, alcoholic. I just get so excited. So if you think about it, like we're all speaking, we all might speak different languages, we all look different, we all come from different backgrounds. But the one commonality is the fact that we're speaking the same words. Those pages have not changed in all of the editions. So you can go into any room, into any convention, into any place, and you can understand the language that's being spoken. Like it's incredible. I just love it. Thanks.
Thank you, Miss Lyndsey. Glad you're here. Thank you for sharing. The that is something that I can to relate to the reading. Many of our friends encourage us by saying that this is but a beginning and only the augury of a much larger future ahead, and that is so true. And this when I read this, I was like, wait a second, 1959 or 55, Alaska and Hawaii weren't even of the United States yet. I need to do my geography of where I even live. So, but that, I mean, the changes and you talked about that, but you know, I know that when I go to, like I've been on art events, so I've gone on I've gone on the cruise, I've been to, I've done a picnic with my other home group, and let me tell you, when you hold hands, and it's like I felt the electrifying, because I brought the song to one of our music meetings that day, that I was able to hold hands with my sponsor, my grand sponsor, my other home group for the first time in person, and like I'm like like the power of God is I don't play. Like that's a real thing, and it's but that's, you know, that's what this way of life has afforded me. It's afforded me to experience those things. And so you know, just like this group hasn't been around since 1939. We're one of those mushroomings. We're a part of that effect. Like, we are a part of this whole. Um, so we're miracles. I mean, I'm pumped. I've already been pumped up reading the preface, the forward to the first edition, and starting this forward to the second edition. So, thanks for letting me share on that. Come on in, Miss Wendy.
Hey, Wendy Alcoholic. I just wanted to share about my experience. The first time I ever felt like I have, had situations, and I still have situations where I feel my higher power is at play, right? My higher power is at work, and my higher power is guiding it. But the first time and the only time I have ever truly felt that electrifying, my hair standing on end, I know that I'm experiencing something that is other than, that is bigger than me, is in my own A home group. And it was with a group of 10 people. And I've had that experience a handful of times in there, and I've had it a handful of times in the zoo crew, but you just feel and that it's almost like there's another frequency that comes into that room, and it's just it's unbelievable. It really is. Thanks for letting me share that, Errol. It really is.
Thank you, Miss Wendy. Thank you. All right. And then, like, when you hear people and God confirms it for you, like I just got, because I'm like, in my head, I wanted to say out loud, which I'm going to say now, the spiritual life is not a theory, we must live it. But I like, for me today, I get to live it. And I get to, because this God conscious thing, I never, but I experience it. Like, I get to feel like when you were done speaking, and when Valerie was speaking, and when Lyndsey, and when people share their experience, strength, and hope, and I know it's of God, I feel it. Like, it's pretty flippin' cool, if you ask me, because you can't, yes, I can look at the sky and say, well, God is bigger than me. Thank you, God, right? But to feel that spiritual experience, like that's a warm hug that God's giving me. It's like, all right, let's keep doing this. I can trudge as deep as you need me to trudge. Let's go. Come on. Oh, Valerie didn't have her hand up. Okay, so the spark that was to flare into the first AA group was struck at Akron, Ohio in June 1935. During a talk between a New York stockbroker and an Akron physician, so they're talking about Bill and Dr. Bob. 6 months earlier, the broker had been relieved of his drink obsession by a sudden spiritual experience. Following a meeting with an alcoholic friend who had been in contact with the Oxford groups of that day, he had also been greatly helped by the late Dr. William D. Silkworth, a New York specialist in alcoholism, who is now counted no less than a medical saint by AA members, and whose story of the early days of our society appears in the next pages. From this doctor, the broker had learned the grave nature of alcoholism, though he could not accept all the tenets of the Oxford group. He was convinced of the need of moral inventory, there's step 4, confession, that's step 5, of our personality defects, restitutions to those harmed, so 8 and 9, helpfulness to others, there's step 12, and the necessity of belief and dependence upon God. How important is step 3? Well, it tells me right there. Would anybody like to come in and share on that part of? So he's talking about the stockbrokers, Bill Wilson. The Akron physician is Dr. Bob or William D. Silkworth, and then Ebby Thatcher is the friend who Bill is referring to in this paragraph. Come on in, Clyde.
Yeah, thanks, Elisa. Hi, I'm an alcoholic. My name's Clyde. And yeah, you did a good job of pointing out the steps in there. All 12 steps are contained there because the belief in is coming to believe step 2, and dependence upon God is step 3. So important. Plus, when we're depending on God, we're doing the 6th and 7th step, and we're also doing the 10th and 11th step. So that's where 3, 6, 7, 10, 11 are all included in that dependence upon God. So that's the whole program right there in those short little sentences. Love it.
That is awesome. Thank you, Clyde. More is always revealed. All right. I mean, I just love that the dependence on God today. That's I mean, all right, so I'm going to continue reading. Prior to his journey to Akron, the broker had worked hard with many alcoholics on the theory that only an alcoholic could help an alcoholic. But they had succeeded only keeping sober himself. The broker had gone to the Akron on a business venture which had collapsed, leaving him greatly in fear that he might start drinking again. He suddenly realized that in order to save himself, he must carry his message to another alcoholic. That alcoholic turned out to be the Akron physician. So the importance of step 12 is what is being delivered here. And even when I do give it away, that doesn't mean the other person's going to take it or stay sober. My work isn't dependent on someone else's. I cannot go in thinking that I am going to keep somebody else sober. Only God can do that. We know that from our personal experiences. But at the end of the day, I know that by working with all of you, I'm going to stay sober. And I have just reinforced everything into my problem, which is my mind, right? The problem of the alcoholic centers in his mind rather than his body. So would anybody like to come in and share on that? All right. The physician had repeatedly tried spiritual means to resolve his alcoholic dilemma, but failed. But when the broker gave him Dr. Silkworth's description of alcoholism and its hopelessness, the physician began to pursue the spiritual remedy for his malady with a willingness he had never before been able to muster. He sobered, never to drink again up to the moment of his death in 1950. This seemed to prove that one alcoholic could affect another alcoholic as no non-alcoholic could. It also indicated that strenuous work one alcoholic with another was vital to permanent recovery. So I need willingness. I need and for this person's example, he was able to, with the help of his higher power, muster more willingness than he'd ever been able to, which is pretty cool. And he died sober. Would anybody like to come in and share on that part?
Hey, Elisa, I'm Lyndsey. I'm an alcoholic, and I just wanted to comment on a little bit. I'm gonna process a little slower, so I'm back here thinking about working with another alcoholic, and for me, that makes complete sense. And I've practiced this. When I'm working with another alcoholic, I'm not stuck in my head thinking about myself and all of my problems and being, dishonest, self-seeking, self-justification. But then not only that, if I'm sharing with another person about AA, then I'm constantly, kind of living and breathing and in that mindset of thinking that way. And as you were reading just now, a thought, came through my head, which was, what in the world, how did the world did he just come up with that? But he's right. In my experience, working with somebody else is what keeps me sober and keeps me in the program. So thanks for letting me share, y'all.
Thank you, Miss Wendy. Come on in, Clyde.
Thanks, Elisa. Yeah, it just hit me that he's talking about Dr. Bob pursuing the spiritual remedy for his malady. You know, it talks about when the spiritual malady is overcome, we straighten out physically and mentally later in the book. And this sounds like Dr. Bob's first step, finally. I think he thought prior to learning from Dr. Silkworth, he thought he could work it out himself. He thought he had the power to do it with his religious leanings and everything. He was a devout Christian, and he tried for years to get sober using just religion and his own power, and it didn't work. And once Dr. Silkworth explained the nature of alcoholism and he understood that, he realized, oh man, I'm not going to be able to do this on my own. I need to really, really pursue this spiritual angle. So that's what set him in the right direction, understanding his powerlessness.
Love it. Thank you, Clyde. Absolutely. Understanding. And then his willingness at WHO, the WHO. And then it, the vitality of step 12. I can't just do 1 through 11. If I want to stay recovered, if I want to stay away from alcohol, I have to stay in step 12. It is vital, which the definition I don't know it specifically, but it's vital to my permanent recovery. So it's life or death. I mean, that's not the definition, but that's my definition. It's if I choose not to do it, well, then I'm playing with fire and I'm closer to a drink than I actually think I am. All right, so hence the two men set to work almost frantically upon alcoholics arriving in the ward of the Akron City Hospital. Their very first case, a desperate one, recovered immediately and became AA number 3. He never had another drink. The work at Akron continued through the summer of 1935. There were many failures, but there was an occasional heartwarming success. When the broker returned to New York in the fall of 1935, the first AA group had actually been formed, though no one had realized it at the time. And Clyde, maybe you can help me. Is that Bill Dotson, AA number 3?
Yes, it is. And his story is in the back of the book.
Thank you. All right. So a second small group promptly took shape in New York, to be followed in 1937 with the start of a third at Cleveland, and this is where Clarence Schneider comes into the picture. Besides these, there were scattered alcoholics who had picked up the basic ideas in Akron or New York, who were trying to form groups in other cities. By late 1937, the number of members having substantial sobriety time behind them was significant to convince the membership that a new light had entered the dark world of the alcoholic. And I'm going to break it to you. That substantial recovery time was 2 years. But it was enough to continue to keep this going, right? But if you think about it, for us, could we go 5 minutes without thinking about a drink? Anybody want to come in and share on either one of those readings? Okay. It was now time, the struggling groups thought, to place their message and unique experience before the world. This determination bore fruit in the spring of 1939 by the publication of this volume. The membership had then reached about 100 men and women. The fledgling society, which had been nameless, now began to be called Alcoholics Anonymous from the title of its own book. The flying blind period ended and AA entered a new phase of its pioneering time. With the appearance of the new book, a great deal began to happen. Dr. Harry Emerson Fosdick, the noted clergyman, reviewed it with approval. In the fall of 1939, Fulton Owsler, then editor of Liberty, printed a piece in his magazine called Alcoholics and God. This brought a rush of 800 frantic inquiries into the little New York office, which meanwhile had been established. Each inquiry was painstakingly answered. Pamphlets and books were sent out. Businessmen traveling out of existing groups were referred to these prospective newcomers. New groups started up, and it was found, to the astonishment of everyone, that AA's message could be transmitted in the mail as well as by word of mouth. By the end of 1939, it was estimated that 800 alcoholics were on their way to recovery. So within a year, 800% is what that is. An 800% success rate. Because it was 100, and then by the end of the year, 800. So that's pretty cool. Now, my name's Elisa. I'm covered alcoholic. The thing that I read differently this time is it says that a new group started up, and it was found, to the astonishment of everyone, that AA's message could be transmitted in the mail as well as by word of mouth. So that's exactly what happened with Zoom. And we're going to find out in a little bit that we were actually doing online meetings for 20 years before Zoom became a thing. But we're not there yet. But the prejudice of, oh, we can't have Zoom meetings, they were doing it by mail before, you know? So who would
And the
like to come in and
earliest,
share on this?
sorry for interrupting you, Wendy, alcoholic, the
No,
earliest form of distance education, if you look at the history of distance ed, the earliest form of distance education was correspondence by mail. So we're just following along with society and growing. Thanks for letting me throw that in. Sorry for interrupting.
No, you're good. You're good. It's absolutely beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. It's a meeting. It doesn't matter where it's held. If you're speaking the language of the heart, it's a meeting. And, our higher power is there if there's two of us. Where two or more are there, the higher powers come too. So our society then entered a fearsome let me go back up. In the spring of 1940, John D. Rockefeller Jr. gave a dinner for many of his friends, to which he invited AA members to tell their stories. News of this got out on the worldwide wires, which is what, Morse code? Was that the wires they're referring to? To the bookstores to get the book Alcoholics Anonymous. By March 1941, the membership had shot up to 2,000. Then Jack Alexander wrote a feature article in the Saturday Evening Post and placed such a compelling picture of AA before the general public that Alcoholics in Need of Help really deluged us. By the close of 1941, AA numbered 8,000 members. The mushrooming process was in full swing. AA had become a national institution. Wow. We grew 8,000% in 2 years. If you don't believe in the power of God, I have nothing else to help convince you. I'll keep praying for you is where I will stop. I mean, I won't stop completely. I'll keep praying for you because nobody is completely hopeless until you stop breathing and your heart stops pumping. But that is powerful. Would anybody like to come in and share? No? Okay, I'm going to keep reading. Our society then entered a fearsome and exciting adolescent period. The test that is faced with this: could these large numbers of erstwhile erratic alcoholics successfully meet and work together? Would there be quarrels over membership, leadership, and money? Would there be strivings for power and prestige? Would there be schisms which would split apart? AA. Soon AA was beset by these very problems, and on every side and in every group. But out of this frightening and at first disrupting experience, the conviction grew that AAs had to hang together or die separately. We had to unify our fellowship or pass off the scene. So that was life without the traditions, is what that paragraph gives an example of. So I'm gonna continue reading because we're gonna introduce the traditions. As we discovered the principles by which the individual alcoholic could live, so we had to evolve principles by which the AA groups and AA as a whole could survive and function effectively. It was thought that no alcoholic man or woman could be excluded from our society, that our leaders might serve but not govern. That's tradition 2. The first one was tradition 3. So it was thought that no alcoholic man or woman could be excluded from our society. That's tradition 3. Tradition 2 is that our leaders serve, but they do not govern. That each group was to be autonomous. There's 4. And there was to be no professional class of therapy. There's 8. There were no fees or dues. There's 7. Our expenses were to be met by our own voluntary contributions. There was the least possible organization, even in our service centers. There's 11. Or that's not 11. Let me go back to mine. That's 8. That's tradition 8. Our public relations were to be based on attraction rather than promotion. There's 11. It was decided that all members ought to be anonymous at the level of press, radio, and films. And in no circumstances should we give endorsements, make alliances, or enter public controversies. There's 9. Did I miss any?
That last one was tradition 10 about avoiding public controversy. Let's see. That's 11, is it? Just want to
Yes.
be clear on the last endorsement. I mean, the last
11.
11.
So our public relations policy is based on attraction rather than promotion. We need to always maintain personal anonymity at the level of press, radio, and films. Tradition 10 is Alcoholics Anonymous has no opinion on outside issues, hence the AA name never ought never be drawn into public controversy. So that is 10. That's 10 and 11. They're both in there. And I am quite sure today, as I study this book, starting at page XI for, I think this is my 7th time, and we had 7 participants in today's. This is the 7th time me starting from page XI, that I'm going to find things that I didn't see before, and that God helped Bill write it this way, so that we would never put it down, because we're never done. But all right, so this was the substance of AA's 12 traditions, which are stated in full on page 562 of this book. Though none of these principles had the force of rules or law, they had become so widely accepted by 1950 that they were confirmed by our first international conference held at Cleveland. Today, the remarkable unity of AA is one of the greatest assets that our society has. It's one of the best 12-step promises as well. So would anybody like to come in and share on what we've read up until this point? I'm going to stop the reading there for today. Next week, we will pick up right where we left off, and we will continue doing how we've done it today, and we will read and break it down. Come on in, Miss Lyndsey.
Lyndsey, grateful recovered alcoholic. It's not only a valuable asset to AA, it's a valuable asset to society and reintegration to society. Like we're able to become what we were isolated once, back reintegrated into the general society, which is like absolutely incredible. So that's what I got from that last thing that you just read. Thanks.
Thank you, Lyndsey. Glad you're here. Thank you for coming in and sharing. All right. Anyone else want to come in and share on anything that we've studied today? Any questions, comments, concerns? There's a lot of information in those first few pages, those Roman numerals. All right. Well, thank you so much for everyone joining us today. We are going to meet right here next week. Same bat channel, same bat time, and that's BAT. Uh, so thank you for participating in today's study with us. We're going to take a moment of silence to reflect on what we've done here today, and then we can close with the Lord's Prayer. Who brings us from shame to grace if we let him? Our Father,
Our Father,
Lord in
who
who
art
art
heaven,
in
in heaven,
heaven,
hallowed be thy
hallowed
hallowed be
be
thy
thy
name.
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 Thy kingdom
Thy
come,
kingdom
thy will be
come,
done
thy will be
on earth
done
as it is in
on
heaven.
earth as it
Give
is in
us this
heaven.
day our daily
Give us
bread,
this
and
day our
forgive us
daily
our
bread,
Forgive
and
us
forgive us our
as we forgive
trespasses,
those who
as
trespass
we
against
forgive
us.
those who
And
trespass
lead us
against
not to
us.
temptation, but
Lead us
deliver
not
us
into
from evil.
temptation,
For
but
thine is
deliver
the
us from
kingdom,
evil.
the power,
Thine is the
and the glory,
kingdom,
forever and
power,
ever.
and the
Amen.
glory, forever and ever. Amen.
What a fantastic meeting.
Yeah.
Thanks, y'all.
That was
Great.
awesome, you guys. Thank you so much.
Thanks for
Thank you
being here.
so much.
Hey, everybody, please be sure to subscribe. Subscribe so you know when we drop new videos, new podcasts. And also, please like the videos and share them. Share them, tell your friends about them, spread this great message that we at the Zuko are spreading. So subscribe, like, and share. It really helps. Thank you.